Imagine living a life where no one, not their rudeness, not their lies, not even their disrespect, can shake your peace. Imagine walking through the chaos of the world with a calm so deep, people wonder if you know something they don't. You still hear the insults, you still see the drama, but it no longer enters your system. It touches you, but it doesn't move you. But let's be honest, how many times have you let one careless comment ruin your whole day? How many nights have you stared at the ceiling, replaying an argument, getting angry all over again, even though the moment's long gone? Most people don't live in peace. They live in reaction. They don't own their emotions. Their emotions own them. One insult, one rejection, one unexpected look, and their entire energy shifts. Not because the world is that powerful, but because they never learned how to take that power back. But here's the truth. Stoicism taught centuries ago, and neuroscience confirms today. You can become emotionally untouchable, not cold, not numb, but untouchable, like a mountain in a storm. The wind howls, the rain crashes, but the mountain doesn't move. That's the inner strength we're unlocking today. And once you've got it, you'll never be thrown off by what someone says. You'll never feel small because of someone else's mood. You'll never again be angry or bothered by anyone or anything. We're not just talking about staying calm. We're talking about complete emotional sovereignty, real Stoic power, the kind Marcus Aurelius wrote about, not just to look wise, but to survive the weight of an empire without losing his soul. So, stay with me. What we're about to dive into will reshape how you see people, how you handle triggers, and most importantly, how you master you. And hey, if you appreciate what we're doing here, the clarity, the calm, the tools to live unshaken, there's just one small favor I'll ask. Hit the subscribe button. It's free, it helps more than you know, and it's the kind of support that keeps this content flowing. It's not them. It was never them. That's the first shift in perception you need to make if you want to stop being angry, triggered, or emotionally hijacked by others. You think it's the way they spoke to you, the disrespect in their tone, the way they dismissed your effort or rolled their eyes. But that's just the surface. What really stings is what those moments awaken inside you. Something deeper, something older, something you're not even fully aware is there. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's what we do every time we blame other people for how we feel. We hand over the keys to our emotional state and then wonder why we're always being driven into chaos. But here's the truth. Nobody can make you feel anything without your participation. Anger, frustration, resentment, they're not caused by other people. They're caused by your response to them. And that response is shaped by the unresolved parts of you that you've been avoiding for years. Think about it. Two people can face the exact same insult. One brushes it off, the other stews in it for days. The insult didn't change. The difference is what it met inside. We're not reacting to what they said or did. We're reacting to what it touches in us. Old wounds, expectations, unquestioned beliefs. And more often than not, it's not even about the moment. It's about everything that moment reminds us of. When someone ignores you and you feel invisible, that pain isn't born in that second. It's a repetition, a mirror. Maybe it's reflecting all the times you felt overlooked growing up. When someone criticizes you and you explode, that reaction didn't come from the words themselves. It came from a need to protect an identity you've worked hard to maintain. Maybe being seen as competent or good or strong is so central to how you view yourself that even the slightest crack feels like a collapse. That's the real battlefield, not the conversation, not the coworker or the partner or the stranger online. It's what's happening in you. Aristotle said, Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And self-knowledge isn't just knowing what you like or what your goals are. It's understanding the places in you that still hurt, that still seek approval, that still think peace has to come from being treated a certain way. Here's where the breakthrough begins. You are not your reaction. You are not your anger. You are not your pain. You are the one watching those things. You are the awareness underneath it all. The more you connect to that awareness, the less you need the outside world to behave perfectly in order for you to feel okay. That doesn't mean you have to tolerate disrespect. It means your peace is no longer dependent on the presence or absence of it. That's a whole different level of freedom. Because most people aren't really living, they're just reacting. One text ruins their whole morning. One comment online derails their whole mindset. One bad look from someone else, and they spiral into self-doubt. That's not living. That's surviving on emotional autopilot. But you can step off that ride, and it starts when you stop making them the villain in your story. The moment you stop saying, "They made me feel this way," and start saying, "Something in me responded to that," everything changes. You take back your power. You begin to ask better questions, not, "Why are they like this?" but, "Why does this bother me so much?" Not, "Why are they so disrespectful?" but, "What am I holding on to that makes me so reactive to this?" That question, "What am I holding on to?" is where you'll find most of your answers. Plato once said, "The first and best victory is to conquer self." And conquering the self isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about understanding where they come from and deciding if they still serve you. It's about noticing when your pride wants to fight back, when your ego wants to be right, and choosing not to be led by that. This isn't passivity, it's power. It's the power to choose your response, to feel the rise of emotion and not let it run your next move. That kind of control isn't something you're born with. It's something you train, like a muscle, like discipline, like presence. The people who trigger you the most, they're your greatest teachers, not because they're wise or kind or helpful, but because they show you exactly where you're still attached, where you're still raw, where you've built an identity that depends on others treating you a certain way to feel valid. And when you use those moments as mirrors, not battlefields, you grow. That's the difference between reacting and evolving. Socrates once said, "Let him who would move the world first move himself." And that movement doesn't start with changing your environment. It starts with watching yourself more clearly, becoming aware of the stories you tell when something doesn't go your way, the assumptions you make, the roles you play, the truths you hold on to without question. When you believe someone should treat you better and they don't, that gap between expectation and reality becomes suffering. But when you accept that people will act based on who they are, not who you are, you stop tying your emotions to their behavior. You become unshakable because your peace is no longer reactive, it's rooted. You don't get offended as easily. You don't chase apologies. You don't need everyone to get you or agree with you or like you. You know who you are. And that knowing becomes your anchor, even when the storm hits, even when someone disrespects you, even when life feels unfair. Because you've stopped trying to control things that were never yours to control. You've stopped outsourcing your peace to people who are just as lost and reactive as you once were. You've stopped depending on the world to reflect back your worth. That's what Stoicism has always been about. Epictetus taught that we should concern ourselves only with what's within our control, our thoughts, our actions, our beliefs. Everything else, what people say, what they do, how they treat us, is external. If you anchor your calm to the external, you'll never be steady. But if you learn to rest it in the internal, nothing can move you. That's the invitation, to move through life with grace, not because life is gentle, but because you are grounded, to face criticism, rejection, misunderstanding, and remain clear, not numb, not shut down, but strong, centered, awake. The next time someone tries to provoke you, let it pass through. Don't deny the reaction, just don't identify with it. See it rise, watch it fall. Let it be what it is, a ripple, not a wave. And if it still gets to you, if the sting lingers, if the thoughts come back later, good. That's not failure, that's the doorway. That's where you walk through and say, here's where I still need to do the work. Because the goal isn't to become emotionless. The goal is to become emotionally free, not controlled by impulses, not ruled by pride, but aware, intentional, unbothered, not because you avoid life, but because you face it so deeply, it no longer scares you. And when you live from that place, people notice. They may not say it out loud, but they feel it. The steadiness, the calm, the energy that says, you can bring me chaos, but you won't pull me into it. That's not arrogance, that's mastery. And if you've made it this far, there's a reason. Some part of you knows it's time to stop giving your peace away to people who don't even know what they're doing. Some part of you knows that your calm is too precious to keep handing out in exchange for approval, validation, or control. You weren't born knowing how to react to rejection. You didn't arrive in this world with a detailed manual that said, when someone disrespects you, flare up. When they ignore you, crumble. When they criticize you, defend your pride at all costs. Those reactions, the quick anger, the defensiveness, the need to prove something, those were learned, passed down, absorbed, like second-hand smoke. You didn't write the script, you just started playing the part. That's what makes this so powerful to realize. Most of what you think is you, your temperament, your triggers, the way you react under pressure, isn't actually you. It's conditioning. It's habit. It's a script that started writing itself long before you were aware it was even happening. Somewhere along the way, maybe someone taught you, directly or indirectly, that being ignored means you don't matter. That being challenged means you have to fight. That being wrong means you're not enough. These beliefs are like hidden code running quietly in the background of your life. And until you bring them into the light, they'll keep directing your reactions without your permission. Carl Jung said it best. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That means every emotional outburst, every sudden shutdown, every time you overthink something someone said, that's not fate, that's not your personality, that's programming, and programming can be rewritten. But you can't change a script you're not aware you're acting out. So the work begins by becoming the observer, not the actor. You notice, you pause, you step back just far enough to ask, what part of me is speaking right now? That question, when asked sincerely, opens the door to everything. Because the moment you feel triggered, the moment something or someone lights a fire in you, it's easy to believe that fire is righteous, that it's justified. But strong emotion doesn't always mean truth. Often it just means the script got activated. And when you keep playing out the same emotional loops over and over, with different people and different situations, you start to notice something strange. The actors keep changing. But the storyline? It's always the same. That's the giveaway. It's never really about them. It's about what they awaken. And most people never take the time to trace the fire back to the spark. They don't question the reaction. They just assume it's valid because it feels real. But intensity doesn't equal accuracy. Just because you feel it deeply doesn't mean it's rooted in clarity. And when you start to unpack those reactions, what you'll often find underneath isn't strength, it's fear. Fear of being seen a certain way, fear of not being heard, fear of not being enough. The script says, if I'm criticized, I must defend. But what if you didn't? What if you simply listened, filtered, and chose your response, not from fear, but from presence? That's authorship. That's what it means to take the pen back. It doesn't mean you never feel anger or sadness or discomfort again. It means you're no longer reacting from an unconscious place. You're responding with awareness. That space between trigger and reaction, that's where your freedom lives. Viktor Frankl, a man who survived unspeakable trauma, said it like this: "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Think about how different life feels when you stop reacting from the old script. Someone interrupts you, and instead of jumping to reclaim your voice, you observe. You breathe. You respond calmly, or maybe not at all. Not because you're weak, but because you've realized not every moment deserves your energy. You've stopped auditioning for people who don't hold the power to validate you. That shift isn't subtle, it's transformational. It's the moment you move from being emotionally controlled to emotionally in control. Not controlled as in robotic, controlled as in present, conscious, grounded. When you no longer need to prove or win or be right just to feel secure, you've won something much deeper than any argument could offer, and you begin to notice the scripts that once controlled you lose their grip. The need for approval fades. The fear of being misunderstood softens. The urge to match someone else's aggression with your own dissolves. You realize you don't have to mirror the chaos around you. You can be the calm that reminds people there's another way to live. Plato once said, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." He wasn't talking about domination. He was talking about discipline, self-awareness, the quiet strength of someone who knows their worth and doesn't need to scream it at the world. Because when you're still running an old script, it's not just your emotions that suffer, it's your relationships, your peace, your potential. How many doors have you closed because you reacted too quickly? How many connections have you damaged because the old story said, "If they don't respect me immediately, cut them off"? That story might have protected you once, but now it's probably keeping you small. Taking authorship of your reactions means you're no longer a puppet of past pain. You start recognizing the patterns. You feel the heat rising, and instead of acting on it, you sit with it. You ask yourself, what would my highest self do here? And then you do that, even if it's hard, especially if it's hard. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And if that feels too heavy, let's flip it. The examined life is where you find your peace. That's where you begin to experience something rare in this world. Sovereignty over your inner world. That's not something someone gives you. That's something you claim. And yes, it takes work. Yes, it's uncomfortable at times. Watching yourself isn't always fun, but neither is staying stuck in patterns that keep you reactive, restless, and resentful. When you stop reacting from the script, you start writing something new. You stop being the echo of every harsh word you've ever heard. You stop playing out roles written by fear, ego, or childhood defense mechanisms. You start living from choice. And people around you will feel the difference. They'll notice you don't flinch the way you used to, that you're not baited by sarcasm or passive aggression, that you don't need to win every interaction. You'll stop chasing closure from people who can't even give it to themselves. You'll stop needing every misunderstanding to be corrected. Sometimes you'll just let it go, not because you're defeated, but because you've chosen peace over performance. That's emotional authorship. That's power. And here's what's even more beautiful. When you start living this way, your presence becomes medicine for yourself, for others. You give people permission to slow down, to reflect, to drop their guard, because your stillness reminds them that maybe, just maybe, they don't have to keep playing the same roles either. So the next time you feel triggered, remember this: that first surge of emotion, it's not you, it's the script, and you don't have to follow it. You can pause, breathe, reclaim the pen, and write something better. Every time you do, you become less of a puppet and more of a presence, less of a reaction and more of a response. And that, right there, is the path to peace. Because the only real control you have is how you choose to show up. Not what they do, not what they say, just you, your awareness, your choices, your script. And if you've come this far and something in you is waking up, if this resonates in a way you didn't expect, it's not by accident. You were meant to hear it. You didn't lose control when they said the words. You lost it the moment you took them personally. That split second when your heart tightened, your jaw locked, and your mind began spinning with comebacks and judgments, that was the real surrender. The moment you got offended, you gave away your power. And most of us do it without even realizing. Not because we're weak, but because we've been trained to believe that offense is a natural, automatic response. Someone insults you, you feel wounded. Someone disagrees with you, you feel threatened. Someone misunderstands you, and suddenly you feel invisible. But what if that pain, that sting, that emotional drop wasn't something that happened to you, but something you allowed? We live in a world where offense is currency. It's how people bond, how they gain attention, how they define themselves, by what makes them angry. But when everything offends you, you're no longer responding to reality. You're reacting to a fragile self-image, one that requires constant protection and reinforcement, and that's exhausting. Aristotle once said, "Anybody can become angry, that is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, is not within everybody's power." He was pointing to something most people overlook. Real emotional power isn't found in reaction. It's found in restraint, in discernment, in choosing what deserves your energy. Because here's the thing, offense is not objective. What hurts you might not even register for someone else. It's not the event, it's your interpretation. It's the story your mind tells the second something uncomfortable happens. They're disrespecting me. They don't value me. They're trying to hurt me. And once that narrative locks in, your nervous system reacts as if it's the truth. But offense isn't an alarm. It's a mirror. It reflects what parts of your identity are still fragile, still unhealed. That's where your real work lives. Not in silencing the world around you, but in strengthening the world within you. Because when your sense of worth depends on everyone treating you perfectly, you're always at risk. One sharp word, one misstep, and your peace disappears. What makes someone truly unbothered isn't numbness, it's clarity. It's knowing that your value doesn't rise or fall based on someone else's opinion. It's knowing that you don't need everyone to understand you. You don't need every comment to be kind. You don't even need to be agreed with. What you need is to stop volunteering your power to people who haven't earned it. That power isn't something they take, it's something you give. Every time you let someone's words decide your mood, every time you shrink or explode to defend an identity, every time you let offense define the moment instead of your principles. And the more often that happens, the more you train your mind to look for disrespect, for betrayal, for injustice, even when it's not there. Plato warned us long ago, we can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. And this is exactly that. We become afraid of truth, of growth, of self-responsibility, because it means we can no longer blame the world for how we feel. And that's uncomfortable at first, but it's also freeing. Because if you're not responsible for your reactions, then you're just a puppet. You're always at the mercy of the next person's behavior, the next careless comment, the next disagreement. But if you are responsible, then everything changes. You realize you have options. You can pause, reflect, reframe, choose. You can learn to ask yourself better questions in the heat of the moment. Not, why are they like this? But, why does this hit me so hard? Not, how dare they? But, what part of me still needs this kind of validation? That level of self-honesty might sting at first, but it liberates you, because it puts the focus back where it belongs, on your inner world. You start to see offense not as an injury, but as insight, as feedback, as a signal that something in you is still raw, still seeking approval, still trying to prove its worth. And when you can look at that without flinching, without running, without blaming, that's when you start to grow. Socrates once said, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." Getting offended is often just fighting the old beliefs, old stories, old defenses. But when you stop feeding that loop, you can start building something stronger, a new default, one rooted in confidence, in composure, in quiet strength. You stop reacting from your wounds and start responding from your values. You become harder to provoke, not because you're colder, but because you're wiser, because you know the difference between something that's harmful and something that's just uncomfortable, between disrespect and misunderstanding, between actual threats and imagined ones. The moment you realize you don't have to respond to every challenge is the moment you step into a deeper kind of freedom. And that freedom isn't about letting people walk all over you. It's about refusing to let them walk inside your mind without permission. Let's say someone insults you. You hear it, you feel it, but you don't react. You don't internalize it. You watch it like a passing car. It's there. You see it, but it doesn't hit you. That's not detachment. That's self-respect. You respect yourself enough not to let a few careless words rewrite your self-image. And when you operate from that place, your energy changes. You stop needing to prove yourself in every interaction. You stop getting sucked into pointless arguments. You stop throwing away your peace like it's cheap. And people feel it. They may not say it, but they sense the difference. That groundedness, that emotional weight, that quiet command that says, "I'm not here to be triggered. I'm here to be free." Freedom, in this sense, isn't just about time or money or lifestyle. It's emotional sovereignty. It's knowing that you are the one in charge of how you feel, not the world, not the crowd, not the algorithm, not the stranger in the comments. You. And yes, it's hard sometimes, especially when the insult feels personal, when it echoes something you already feared was true. That's when offense feels most justified. But it's also when the opportunity for growth is greatest, because it invites you to look inside and ask, is this something I believe about myself? If it is, work on it. If it's not, let it go. Either way, you win. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That quote alone could change your life if you take it seriously, because it shifts the whole focus from blame to clarity, from defensiveness to depth, from being a victim of every interaction to becoming the master of your inner experience. That doesn't mean you won't feel things. You will. You're human. But feeling something doesn't mean you have to act on it. And that's where power lives, in the space between the feeling and the action, in the choice to breathe instead of lash out, to listen instead of argue, to let the moment pass without turning it into a storm. So the next time you feel the sting of offense rising, remember, this is a fork in the road. You can give your power away, or you can keep it. You can replay the insult in your head all night, or you can see it for what it is, a passing thought from someone who may not even understand themselves. Because in the end, what offends you reveals more about you than it does about them. It points to the edges of your ego, the cracks in your confidence, the places you're still not fully at peace with who you are. And when you heal those places, the world stops being so loud, so hostile, so threatening. You start to move differently, speak differently, think differently. You don't walk into every room trying to protect yourself. You walk in already whole. It's about knowing you don't need to be offended to stand strong. And when you finally stop giving it away, that power becomes yours again, fully, quietly, permanently. When someone lashes out, mocks you, or treats you coldly for no clear reason, your first instinct might be to take it personally, to believe it's an attack, to feel like you did something wrong or that you're somehow not enough. That's how we've been trained to think. If they're upset, it must be about us. If they're distant, we must have failed. But the truth, the deeper truth, is this: they're not attacking you. They're bleeding on you. That anger, that sarcasm, that sharp look, it's not a weapon aimed at your identity. It's a symptom of something unhealed in them. Pain has a way of leaking out. Sometimes it erupts, sometimes it festers silently, but it always shows up somewhere, and often it lands on the people closest by. You just happen to be standing there when it spilled over. Carl Jung once said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." What he meant is this: the more you understand your own wounds, your own emotional history, the easier it becomes to see that others aren't trying to hurt you. They're trying to survive themselves. And sometimes survival looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like control. Sometimes it looks like cruelty. But in almost every case, it's just pain in disguise. Think about how you behave when you're hurting. Do you always communicate clearly? Are you always patient, open, and kind when you're overwhelmed, scared, or grieving something privately? Probably not. That's not because you're a bad person. It's because pain narrows the mind. It turns the heart inward. It shuts down empathy. And that's what happens to others too. But here's where most people get stuck. They think recognizing someone else's pain means excusing their behavior. It doesn't. You can still set boundaries. You can still say, "This isn't okay." But you say it with clarity, not with confusion. You say it without tying their pain to your worth. Because when someone treats you with disrespect, the danger isn't just what they say or do. It's what your mind makes of it. The interpretation, the story that forms. They ignored me, so I must not be valuable. They yelled at me, so maybe I deserved it. These quiet conclusions are where the real damage lives. But when you remember that their behavior is about them, not you, something changes. You stop absorbing the energy. You stop replaying the moment on a loop. You don't carry it into your sleep, your relationships, your self-image. You see the pain for what it is, misplaced, misdirected, misunderstood, but not yours to carry. Socrates taught that people are not angry at you. They are angry at themselves for not being able to manage you. That's a humbling thought. What seems like an attack is often a reaction to their own lack of control, their own inner chaos. Your calm, your confidence, your silence, it reminds them of what they haven't resolved. And sometimes that's enough to trigger them. It's not your job to fix them, but it is your responsibility not to internalize it. Because if you let their bleeding define you, you become a reflection of their wounds, not your truth. You start to react instead of respond. You match their tone. You mirror their dysfunction. And slowly, without noticing, you become part of the pain cycle too. But there's another path. One where you don't have to retaliate. One where you don't have to shrink. One where you simply stand in your strength and say, I see what this is, and it's not mine. That's not indifference, it's mastery. It's the kind of inner stillness that can only come when you realize your self-worth doesn't rise or fall with someone else's mood. Plato once wrote, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." He didn't say everyone deserves your energy, but he did remind us that most people are carrying something invisible, an old betrayal, a deep fear, a relentless voice in their head that never lets them rest. And when that pressure builds, it erupts, often onto the wrong person. That doesn't mean you should accept mistreatment. It means you no longer mistake it for truth. This is how you hold your ground. You recognize the pain. You honor your own boundary. But you don't take the insult into your identity. You don't let someone else's behavior rewrite your story. You just let it pass. Not because you're weak, but because you're finally strong enough not to need their validation. And what happens over time is remarkable. You start to see patterns that were invisible before. You notice how often people lash out after being hurt, how quickly coldness follows insecurity, how silence often masks fear of rejection. Suddenly, the behavior that once confused or wounded you becomes easier to interpret. You stop guessing what's wrong with you and start understanding what's unresolved in them. That shift is subtle, but it's everything. It's the difference between spending hours trying to fix yourself to win someone's approval and spending that same time returning to your own peace. It's the difference between reacting with anger and responding with clarity. It's the difference between making someone else's wounds about you and letting them stay where they belong. But let's be honest, this isn't easy, especially when the words cut deep. When they come from someone you love or someone you trusted, in those moments it's natural to feel shaken. That's okay. You're not a robot. You're not here to be untouched. But you are here to be aware, to notice the reaction, to witness it, and then to remind yourself, this pain is theirs, not mine. Because the moment you internalize it, you make it part of your identity, and once it's in there, it becomes harder to shake. You carry it into the next interaction, the next relationship, the next version of yourself, and before you know it, your reflection is shaped not by truth, but by wounds that never belonged to you. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So is peace. So is presence. So is emotional freedom. It's not a one-time epiphany. It's a daily choice. To return to your center, to see things clearly, to feel the pain without becoming it. The next time someone is sharp with you, try this. Pause. Take one breath, then say silently, "This is their storm, not mine." You don't need to fix it. You don't need to understand it. You just need to know that it's not a reflection of you. And if that helps even once, if it saves your peace for one day, then it's worth it. Because the people who bleed on you, they may never know the impact of their words, but you do. And that awareness gives you something rare, the ability to stop the cycle, to end the transfer of pain, to feel what's happening around you without letting it redefine what's happening within you. So when the world gets loud and the comments get sharp and the people around you forget their own worth and try to project it onto you, stay rooted, not defensive, not dismissive, just steady. No one tells you this when you're young, but the deepest emotional pain you'll feel in life often won't come from what people do. It'll come from what you expected them to do, and they didn't. That sting you carry, the disappointment that lingers, the tension you replay in your head late at night, it's usually not about the words said or the silence that followed. It's about the invisible contract you were holding on to, the one that said, if I'm kind, they'll respect me. If I show up, they'll value me. If I'm honest, they'll never hurt me. But no one signed that contract except you. And when life doesn't follow your script, it feels like betrayal. But it's not betrayal. It's life being life. It's people being human. And it's you slowly learning that your expectations were never guarantees. They were silent demands that the world didn't agree to. Aristotle once said, "Hope is a waking dream." But unexamined expectations? They're more like sleeping traps. You walk into them blindly, thinking the world owes you something, thinking people will love you the way you love them, thinking fairness is a rule, not a hope. And when those expectations collapse, it doesn't just hurt, it breaks a version of reality you thought was secure. We don't often realize it, but most of our emotional suffering is self-authored, not consciously, not with malice, but through the quiet, constant creation of inner contracts. With our friends, our partners, our family, even with strangers. We walk through life believing, if I do this, I should get that. But life doesn't work like a vending machine. You don't insert kindness and always get appreciation. You don't give your best and automatically receive fairness. People don't play by rules they never knew they were part of. And that's where the pain comes from. When someone forgets to acknowledge your effort, it cuts. Not because of the act itself, but because of what you expected in return. When you open up to someone and they pull away, it burns. Not because sharing was wrong, but because you assumed they'd hold space for you. We don't just get hurt by what happens, we get hurt by what we thought should happen instead. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But I'd add that the most freeing thing might be to accept others as they are too. Not as we hoped they'd be, not as we assumed they'd act, but as they actually show up. Because when you stop expecting people to behave like versions of themselves you created in your mind, you finally let reality breathe. And with that breath comes peace. This doesn't mean giving up on standards. It doesn't mean settling or tolerating harm. It means learning the difference between a value and an expectation. A value is how you choose to live. An expectation is how you believe others should live in response. One gives you power. The other slowly drains it. Plato once said, "Wise men speak because they have something to say, fools because they have to say something." In a similar way, wise people give because it's who they are, not because they're trying to force an outcome. When you remove the hidden strings from your actions, you start doing things from love, not leverage. That's rare, and that's powerful. Think of how often you've felt let down by someone who didn't even know they were on a stage, reading from a script you wrote in your head. You thought, they should know better, they should have said something, they should have shown up. But maybe they weren't trying to hurt you. Maybe they were just being themselves, imperfect, unaware, or operating from their own unspoken scripts. And maybe the real pain wasn't from what they did, but from what you expected them to do and never questioned until it was too late. Socrates reminded us, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. That includes knowing how someone should respond or what someone should feel. The truth is, we barely understand ourselves fully. So expecting others to meet us exactly where we think they should, at the exact emotional level we hoped for, that's setting yourself up to suffer. What if you started giving without needing something in return? What if you loved people for who they are, not who you hope they'll become? What if you let kindness be your baseline, not your bargaining chip? That's not weakness, that's emotional freedom. Because the moment you let go of the emotional contracts, those silent agreements where you believed your effort should guarantee you something, you start seeing people and situations more clearly. You respond based on values, not resentments. You stop punishing people for failing to fulfill roles they never auditioned for. It's not easy at first. The ego loves to keep score. I did this. Why didn't they do that? But the soul doesn't play that game. The soul gives. The soul forgives. the soul moves on, not to avoid pain, but because it knows clinging to invisible contracts only leads to bitterness. And that bitterness, it's like drinking poison and waiting for someone else to feel it. Let it go. Write a new kind of contract, one that only involves you. One that says, I will speak honestly. I will show up fully. I will act with integrity. Not because I expect a return, but because that's who I've chosen to be. That's where real strength begins. That's where you stop being controlled by disappointment. Because disappointment doesn't come from others. It comes from your story about them. Carl Jung also said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And what irritates us most? When people don't act how we imagined. When reality doesn't match the emotional contract we were secretly holding. But instead of using that as fuel for frustration, use it as fuel for growth. Ask, what was I expecting? Why did I expect that? Was that fair? Sometimes it's not about lowering your expectations. It's about letting go of the hidden ones, the ones you never voiced, the ones you didn't even know were running the show. Once those are gone, something beautiful takes their place. Gratitude. You start to appreciate people for what they do bring, not just what they don't. You begin to see life not as something that owes you a return on every investment, but as something rich in unpredictability. And oddly enough, when you stop expecting so much from others, they often show up more sincerely, because there's no pressure, no scorekeeping, no silent weight they can feel but can't understand. You're just free. And if you've ever wondered why life feels so heavy sometimes, it's not always because of what's happening. It's often because of what you expected to happen and now have to let go of. Most of the pain you carry isn't from what the world does to you. It's from who you think you have to be in it. The person you believe you are, or more accurately, the person you think you're supposed to be, is often the very reason you feel offended, rejected, or overwhelmed. That identity, the image you've been shaping and protecting for years, isn't just how you see yourself. It's a contract your ego wrote behind your back, full of terms that you never consciously agreed to, yet follow every single day. It says things like, if I'm smart, I can't be wrong. If I'm kind, people must treat me gently. If I'm successful, everyone should respect me. These rules seem invisible, but you feel them every time someone touches a nerve. Every time someone questions you, interrupts you, underestimates you, or doesn't see you the way you see yourself, something inside tightens. And it's not just discomfort, it's fear. Fear that this identity you've built is being challenged. And if that identity breaks, you're left wondering what's underneath. Plato once said, the first and best victory is to conquer self. But how do you conquer something you don't fully understand? Most people don't realize that the image they're defending isn't who they truly are. It's a mask, a performance, a structure of beliefs built on experience, repetition, and the need to survive emotionally. It's not evil, it's not wrong, but it's fragile. And that's the problem. You suffer every time the world doesn't match your inner script. If someone calls you lazy and you see yourself as hardworking, the sting isn't in their words, it's in the clash. If someone ignores you and you pride yourself on being important, the pain isn't in the silence, it's in what it says about your value. Your identity resists anything that contradicts its narrative, and when it resists, it creates conflict, inside first, then outside. Carl Jung said, we cannot change anything unless we accept it. And that includes the self. But acceptance doesn't mean passivity. It means recognizing the parts of you that are built on fear, approval, and pressure, and being willing to let them soften, being willing to question them. Because when you ask, who am I, really, most people respond with roles, titles, labels, I'm a good person. I'm a leader. I'm not someone who gets disrespected. But these identities are often built defensively, not to express who we are, but to avoid who we fear being. So we hold tightly to them, and the tighter we hold, the more easily we break. What if your identity contract didn't need to be defended? What if you didn't need to be seen as right all the time, or strong all the time, or unbothered all the time? What if you could just be, without explanation, without apology, without the mental gymnastics of proving who you are? Socrates reminded us, the unexamined life is not worth living, and when you stop to really examine your emotional patterns, what you often find is that pain follows protection. The more you protect an identity, the more vulnerable you become to anything that threatens it. That's not confidence, that's prison, because then your peace depends on how others see you, how they speak to you, whether they get you or not. But freedom. Freedom is knowing who you are at your core, beyond the job, the compliments, the reputation. It's being secure in your character, even when someone else questions your behavior. It's being rooted in your values, even when someone misunderstands your actions. It's the quiet knowing that you don't have to be seen as perfect to be whole. Aristotle believed that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, but knowing yourself means more than just being aware of your preferences or goals. It means being willing to dismantle the identity you've built if it's keeping you from peace. It means asking, is this version of me helping me grow, or just keeping me safe? Safe from judgment, safe from rejection, safe from ever having to admit you're still learning, still evolving, still unfinished. And when you let go of the identity contract, something surprising happens. You become less reactive. You stop seeing every disagreement as a personal attack. You stop needing every interaction to affirm who you are. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. You don't need to chase every lost perception. You can let people think what they think because you know who you are, and that knowing doesn't need defending. But here's the paradox. The ego convinces you that defending your image is strength, that being seen as certain, unshakable, and always composed is the goal. But real strength is humility. It's being able to say, yes, I used to believe that. I've changed. Or maybe I was wrong. Or I don't need to convince you. That's not weakness, that's power. Because now your identity isn't rigid. It's alive. It breathes. It adapts. It evolves. And it doesn't collapse every time someone pushes back. Think about how much energy you've spent trying to manage your image. How many words you've used to explain yourself. How many moments you've lost replaying a comment or conversation just because someone didn't see you the way you wanted to be seen. That's not living. That's reacting. And reaction is always rooted in fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of not being enough. Fear that if the image cracks, you'll fall apart. But you won't, because you are not the image. You are the awareness behind it. Carl Jung also said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you were told to be, not who you think you have to be, who you truly are when you strip away the labels, the pressure, the performance. That version of you doesn't need applause, it doesn't need defense, it just exists, steady, present, and real. And when you start living from that place, you become untouchable in a different way. Not because nothing affects you, but because nothing defines you without your permission. You're no longer chained to reactions, you respond, from clarity, from wholeness, from depth. That's why the person you think you are, the one you've been holding on to, is often the root of your suffering. Because as long as your peace depends on protecting that version, you'll never feel safe. You'll always be chasing approval, dodging criticism. trying to stay inside the lines of an identity that may have served you once, but now just limits you. So tear up the contract. You don't need to be the smartest in the room, or the most respected, or the most agreeable. You just need to be honest with yourself about what you're still clinging to, about the parts of you that still feel like they need to earn love, respect, or belonging. And once you can admit that, you're already free, because now you're not driven by image, you're guided by truth. Your truth. The one that doesn't require performance or perfection, just presence. At some point you learn to wear a mask, not the kind you see in costume shops, but the invisible kind. The smile when you're hurt, the silence when you want to scream, the confidence that hides uncertainty. It didn't happen all at once. Maybe you started shrinking your truth in a relationship to keep the peace. Maybe you held back your pain to avoid being seen as dramatic. Or maybe you overachieved, over-explained, overcompensated just to feel like you were finally enough. The mask isn't evil. It was born from survival, from moments when you felt it was safer to perform than to be seen. It helped you navigate a world that isn't always kind to authenticity. But as time went on, the mask stopped being a tool and started becoming your identity. You forgot where it ended and you began. And now you're exhausted, not because you're weak, but because living out of alignment is one of the heaviest things a person can carry. Every interaction becomes a calculation, every conversation a performance. Every room you walk into feels like a stage where you have to measure your words, tone down your opinions, or play the part others expect of you. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But before you can become that person, you have to let go of who you're pretending to be. The version of yourself built to impress, to protect, to please. That version might have gotten you approval, but it never brought you peace. It might have kept you liked, but it didn't make you feel loved, not really, because you always knew deep down they weren't loving you, just the mask. And that's where the suffering begins. Because pretending is a kind of betrayal, a soft one, a subtle one, but a betrayal nonetheless. Every time you silence your truth to be accepted, a piece of your soul pays the price. Every time you laugh at something that hurts you, downplay your needs, or act unaffected when you're actually falling apart, the gap between who you are and who you present widens. Socrates once said, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." But knowing yourself requires looking at the parts you've hidden, not just from others, but from yourself. It means asking the hard questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I believe when I stop trying to be agreeable? What do I actually want, not just what's expected? The answers might shake you. They might unravel the persona you've spent years building. But what's waiting on the other side is something infinitely more real and more peaceful. Because when you burn the mask, you stop negotiating for belonging. You stop earning your worth through performance. You stop being afraid of being misunderstood because you finally understand yourself. Aristotle said, "Happiness belongs to the self-sufficient." And self-sufficiency isn't just about material independence. It's about emotional sovereignty. It's the ability to show up as you are, unapologetically, and let the world respond however it will. Some people will draw closer, some will walk away. But either way, you're finally being seen, not for the role, not for the reputation, but for the soul beneath it all. There's a kind of freedom that only comes when you stop protecting the mask. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's quiet and steady. It looks like speaking honestly, even when your voice trembles. It looks like choosing peace over perfection. It looks like no longer needing to prove your value in every room you walk into. And no, It doesn't mean you abandon growth. It means you grow from truth, not pressure. It means you develop, not to become worthy, but because you already are. You're not chasing wholeness anymore. You're coming back to it. People will feel the difference. When you live without a mask, your presence becomes magnetic. Not because you're trying to be impressive, but because you're real. Because people can sense when someone is grounded in their truth. There's a quiet strength in it, a peace that doesn't need to be explained. The world may not always reward it, but your soul will. Carl Jung also reminded us the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But if you can do that, if you can look at your fears, flaws, and desires without turning away, you'll stop needing the mask. Because now you're not hiding from others. You're no longer hiding from yourself. Most people walk through life hoping it'll be smooth, calm, predictable. They say things like, "I just want peace," or "I can't handle another problem right now," as if life is supposed to wait until they feel ready. But life doesn't ask for your permission. Chaos doesn't knock before it enters. The question is never if it'll arrive, it's how you'll handle it when it does. That's the difference between being reactive and being ready. Emotional resilience isn't built in peaceful moments. It's built before the storm, in silence, through something the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. The idea was simple but powerful. Visualize what could go wrong before it does, so you're not blindsided by it. Not to create fear, not to attract suffering, but to rehearse your response, to train your mind for impact before impact hits. Most people don't do this. They walk around with unspoken assumptions. Today will go well, people will be respectful, nothing will go wrong. So when someone's rude, when a plan falls apart, when emotions run high, they collapse. Not because the situation was unbearable, but because they never mentally prepared for it. And what you don't prepare for will own you. Imagine starting your day with just 2 minutes of premeditation. You pause and think, today I might be ignored, someone might disappoint me, I might feel triggered. And then you mentally walk through those scenarios, not with panic, but with calm. You see the person rolling their eyes, you feel the tension rise, and instead of reacting, you breathe. You choose silence. You picture yourself grounded. What you're doing in that moment is building muscle, not physical muscle, but emotional muscle. And like all muscle, it only grows through resistance. The Stoics weren't pessimists. They weren't obsessed with pain. They were wise enough to know that the best way to stay calm is to expect the heat and rehearse staying cool inside it. Aristotle said, "We become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, brave by doing brave acts." But how do you start acting brave if you've never practiced it in your mind? The brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. Athletes use mental rehearsal, so do performers, soldiers, surgeons. Why not you? When you rehearse chaos before it finds you, you shift from being emotionally fragile to emotionally prepared. You no longer rely on circumstances to keep you balanced. You rely on training. And that training is simple. Visualize the hard thing, and visualize yourself moving through it with grace. Think about how powerful that is. Someone interrupts you in a meeting. In the past, your heart would have jumped, your pride would have snapped back. But now, you've seen this before, in your mind. You've trained for this, so you pause, you breathe, you let the moment pass without letting it control you. That pause, that's the product of rehearsal. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Mental premeditation is how you make the unconscious conscious. You shine light on the situations that usually trigger you and say, "I see you coming." And because you've already practiced your piece, You don't have to build it in the middle of the storm. This isn't about becoming paranoid. It's about becoming prepared. Life will bring discomfort. That's not a flaw in the system. It's part of the design. People will misunderstand you. Delays will happen. People you love will disappoint you. If you expect smoothness, every bump feels like an attack. But if you've rehearsed the bumps, you glide over them, not because they don't hurt, but because they don't surprise you. Socrates once said, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." Rehearsing chaos isn't about obsessing over the past. It's about building new wiring in your mind, so when tension comes, you don't default to panic or blame. You default to stillness. You become like a ship that doesn't sink when the waves hit. Not because it never encountered a storm, but because it was built for it. That's what you're doing every time you mentally walk through a difficult moment and train your reaction, not to be perfect, but to be present. Not to control the world, but to stay in control of yourself. And here's what happens when you live this way. The world stops feeling so threatening, not because it changes, but because you change. You stop fearing people's opinions because you've already rehearsed, not needing them. You stop dreading tough conversations because you've already imagined staying grounded through them. You stop reacting to every inconvenience like it's personal, because you've trained your mind to see it as a test, not an attack. Peace is a practice. Strength is a rehearsal. You don't become calm by accident. You become calm by choice, made over and over again in your thoughts before the moment arrives. So start small. Each morning ask yourself, what could challenge me today? Who might frustrate me? What could go wrong? And then see yourself responding, not with anger or fear, but with awareness. Breathe into it. Don't run from the scenario. Meet it with your mind. That's your mental gym. That's where resilience is born. It's not the pain that breaks you. It's the fact that you didn't see it coming. The betrayal, the silence, the shift in someone's energy. The moment it hits, your chest tightens, not just from the sting of it, but from the shock. How could they do this? Why now? Where did this come from? That's the real wound. The pain is sharp, yes, but the surprise is what makes it unbearable. You expected something else, that's why it hurts. You assumed loyalty would be returned, that your effort would be seen, that someone would treat you the way you would have treated them. And when they didn't, it shattered not just the moment, but your belief in how things were supposed to go. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was the disruption of your inner world. We don't suffer most from injury, we suffer from disorientation. Aristotle once said, "The aim of the wise is not to secure pleasure, but to avoid pain." But even the wise cannot avoid all pain. What they do avoid is being shocked by it, because they expect it. Not in a cynical way, but in a prepared way. They rehearse the possibility. They leave space for life to be unpredictable, for people to be imperfect. And in that space, they cushion themselves from collapse. The moment you think the world owes you consistency, you've set yourself up to be knocked off center. You might not realize it, but you're carrying expectations around like invisible glass towers. You build them without warning. You stack them on people, on plans, on circumstances, and when life bumps into them, and it always does, they crash, and you call it pain. But it wasn't the bump, it was the blindness. You didn't think it could happen, that they could change, that life could turn left so quickly, and so you crumble. Not because you're weak, but because surprise feels like betrayal. And betrayal, even when unintentional, shakes the foundation. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." And we resist acknowledging that people are unpredictable, that outcomes can shift, that tomorrow is not promised. So we cling to how we think things should unfold. And when they don't, we interpret the change as suffering. But what if you stopped expecting smoothness? What if instead you built your internal world with enough flexibility to absorb the impact? That doesn't mean living in fear. It means walking into life with open eyes, seeing things clearly, preparing your mind, not for disaster, but for reality. The Stoics understood this. They practiced premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. They would wake up and ask themselves, who might upset me today? What hardship could I face? Not because they were pessimists, but because they knew that pain is inevitable, but being shocked by it is optional. It's the difference between being hit and being hit off guard. You've felt this before. The moment you were criticized out of nowhere, the breakup you didn't expect, the job you thought was secure that suddenly vanished, the pain itself you could have handled, but the story your mind told, the story that said this isn't how it was supposed to go, that's what broke you. Socrates reminded us, he who is not contented with what he has would not be contented with what he would like to have. That includes emotional expectations. If you demand constant ease, constant praise, constant alignment with your ideals, then you'll live in a state of emotional fragility. Every deviation becomes devastation. But when you begin to expect that pain is part of the journey, not the enemy, but the teacher, you start to move differently. You stop reacting like a victim and start responding like a student. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? The surprise fades, the shock softens, and what remains is clarity. That clarity says, yes, it hurts. But no, I'm not broken. It says, I didn't see this coming, but I was ready anyway. That's a powerful place to live from. It's not about anticipating every event. You can't. Life will always hold surprises, but it is about shifting your relationship to those surprises. Learning not to build your identity around what you expect, but around how you adapt. When someone lets you down, it doesn't shake your foundation because you never built it on them in the first place. When plans fall through, you adjust because you never believed control was your security. When life turns suddenly, you pause because your strength comes from response, not prediction. This mindset won't eliminate pain, but it will eliminate the extra pain, the confusion, the disbelief, the spiraling. It will allow you to feel what's real without being consumed by what's imagined. Plato said, reality is created by the mind. We can change our reality by changing our mind. When you stop believing that life must always align with your hopes and start accepting that it often won't, you stop being thrown every time it doesn't. You become steady. You become ready. And in that readiness, peace begins to grow. So the next time life hits hard, pause, ask yourself, is this pain real or is this the result of surprise? And if it's the surprise, smile quietly. You just found your edge. Now it's time to round it out. Anger doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simmers. Sometimes it explodes. Sometimes it looks like control, and sometimes it looks like collapse. But almost every time, if you really strip it down, it's not about the principle. It's about the ego. That voice inside that whispers, how dare they? The one that takes things personally, that needs to be right, that equates being challenged with being disrespected. The truth is, anger, especially the kind that owns you, isn't a noble defender of justice. It's usually just pride in a costume. We love to think our anger is justified. We say things like, I'm just standing up for myself, or I won't let anyone treat me that way. But beneath those phrases is often a fragile identity trying to protect itself from being pierced. We confuse ego preservation with personal integrity, but they're not the same. Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That irritation, that quick rise of emotion, it's a flare. not from the world, but from within. It signals where we've attached our worth to something external, someone's approval, someone's tone, someone's understanding. And when that external thing shifts, our ego scrambles, it panics, it burns, and that fire becomes our reaction. Anger can feel powerful, it can feel clarifying, even addictive, because it gives you something to hold when things feel out of control. It becomes a mask for deeper emotions you don't want to face: shame, insecurity, fear of not being seen. And so instead of asking, "Why does this hurt?" you say, "They shouldn't have done that." The attention shifts outward. The energy turns defensive. The wound hides. Socrates once said, "An unexamined life is not worth living," and an unexamined anger is especially dangerous, because it convinces you that it's noble, that it's honest, that it's who you are. But anger, left unexamined, becomes a tool of the ego. It doesn't ask for truth. It demands dominance. It doesn't seek peace. It seeks validation. We've all felt it, that moment when someone interrupts you and your body tightens, when you're criticized and your pride jumps in to defend, when you're misunderstood and you feel the urge to correct, to shout, to prove. But those reactions don't come from clarity. They come from identity, from the unconscious belief that I must be seen a certain way or I am not enough. Aristotle said, "Anybody can become angry, that is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not easy." That kind of anger is rare, because most people don't pause to check the source. They just let it spill, onto loved ones, onto strangers, onto themselves, and then they live in the aftermath: apologies, guilt, distance, regret. But what if you did pause? What if, in that heated moment, instead of speaking from fire, you asked yourself, "What part of me feels threatened right now?" That question softens the edges. It brings light to the ego's grip, and once you see it, you're not held hostage by it anymore. The ego thrives in silence, in your silence. It grows when you don't examine your reactions, when you confuse volume with truth, when you let pride speak louder than presence. But when you bring awareness into the heat, the ego shrinks, not instantly, but steadily. This isn't about becoming emotionless, it's about becoming conscious, so that your anger doesn't destroy what you're trying to protect, so that you stop fighting for your identity and start living from your essence. There's a difference. One is reactive, defensive, exhausting. The other is calm, grounded, free. Plato said, "Wise men speak because they have something to say, fools because they have to say something." When anger rules you, you have to say something. You feel compelled to defend, to prove, to explain. But when you're grounded in truth, you can speak only when it serves peace. You can stay silent not out of weakness, but out of power. And here's the paradox. The less you act from ego, the more people feel your strength. You stop chasing validation and start radiating stability. You stop needing to win arguments and start owning your energy. People feel safer around you, not because you're passive, but because you're not explosive, because your calm is real. So when anger comes, and it will, don't fight it, don't shame it. Just slow it down, peel it back. Ask yourself, what am I protecting right now? What belief about myself feels at risk? And then breathe. Because that breath, that space, that's where you take your power back. You won't always get it right. You'll snap sometimes. That's okay. Growth isn't perfect. But every time you choose reflection over reaction, you rewrite the script. You become less controlled by pride, more anchored in truth. Most people think power is loud, that it looks like dominance, quick words, sharp comebacks, that if you don't speak up immediately, you've lost the moment. But real power, deep, grounded, unshakable power often looks like stillness. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you're strong enough to wait, because you've realized that silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. In the space between reaction and response, there's a door. Most people rush right past it. Something gets said, emotions rise, and the mouth opens before the mind catches up. But when you pause, when you say nothing and feel everything, you enter that door. That's where awareness lives. That's where you stop being driven by emotion and start observing it. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The sacred pause is how you begin making the unconscious conscious. It's how you step outside the automatic programming, the defensiveness, the insecurity, the ego, and ask, what's really going on in me right now? That one breath, that one beat of silence, tells you more than 1,000 words ever could. It shows you where your wounds are, where your triggers live, where your values begin and your pride ends. It reveals whether you're about to speak from clarity or from fear, whether what you're about to say is helpful or just habitual. We live in a culture that idolizes speed, quick replies, instant opinions, but wisdom doesn't rush, truth doesn't shout, and the people who've mastered themselves the most aren't the ones with the best arguments. They're the ones who can hold silence without needing to fill it. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom," but self-knowledge doesn't arrive in the middle of an emotional storm. It comes in the stillness, in the pause, in the choice not to lash out just because something stung. When you feel everything, without reacting to all of it, you gain access to something most people never touch: discernment. You learn the difference between pain and truth, between urgency and importance, between what needs to be said now and what's better left unspoken. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not defend yourself, not because you're surrendering, but because you no longer need every moment to prove something. You're not building your identity on reactions anymore. You've outgrown that. You'd rather be at peace than be right. You'd rather be aligned than be loud. Socrates reminded us, the greatest way to live with honor in this world is to be what we pretend to be. And most of us pretend to be strong. But strength isn't in dominance. It's in discipline, in the ability to hold your energy, to observe the chaos without becoming it, to stay grounded even when your emotions beg you to speak. This doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. It means you feel more, not less. You feel deeper, because when you don't rush to react, you finally hear the full message your emotions are trying to send. You realize that the anger is protecting something vulnerable, that the sadness isn't weakness, it's longing, that the anxiety is pointing to where you still seek control, and you can sit with all of it without judgment. This is emotional sovereignty, the ability to respond from awareness rather than react from conditioning. And the beautiful part? That pause grows stronger every time you choose it. Every moment you decide to wait, to breathe, to feel without responding, you're strengthening a muscle. You're retraining your nervous system. You're becoming a calmer, more powerful version of yourself. One who can weather storms, not because they don't hurt, but because you're no longer swept away by every wave. Plato said, "Wise men speak because they have something to say, fools because they have to say something." The sacred pause gives you time to discover which one you're about to be. And if you wait long enough, if you let the emotion pass through fully, you'll notice something remarkable. What felt like urgency often fades. What felt like injustice often softens. What felt like an emergency often turns out to be just another test of your presence. Saying nothing doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you choose what comes next, rather than letting emotion choose for you. That's real freedom. That's what separates those who are owned by their reactions from those who own their responses. So the next time your emotions rise, pause, say nothing, feel everything. Let the moment show you who you really are underneath the impulse. Let it teach you about your patterns, your growth, your inner landscape. Let the silence speak louder than your ego. Because your true power doesn't come from what you say. It comes from what you don't need to say. It's easy to point the finger outward, to say they disrespected you, they triggered you, they made you feel small. The mind does it so quickly, so naturally. Someone rolls their eyes, interrupts you, forgets to include you, and instantly the blame lands outside. But what if the discomfort you feel in those moments doesn't actually come from them? What if the mirror isn't facing outward at all? What if it's turned inward? What if the reflection you're reacting to is your own? It's not them, it's what they awakened in you. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That irritation, that tightness in your chest, that heat behind your eyes, it's a flare, not a weapon, not an attack. A flare pointing you toward an unhealed part of yourself. And if you're willing to look, really look, you'll see it's not the other person you're at war with. It's the story you've been telling yourself for years. The story that says you have to be liked to be worthy, that you must always be right to be respected, that if someone doesn't choose you, there must be something wrong with you. These stories live deep, and they sit silently until someone, usually unintentionally, bumps into them. When that happens, it's not their behavior alone that hurts. It's the echo of the wound inside. That's why the same situation can make one person explode and another stay calm. It's not the moment, it's the meaning, the filter, the history underneath. Think about it. You're ignored in a conversation. One part of you brushes it off, another part spirals. Why? Because being ignored might not just feel rude, it might remind you of something older. A moment where you felt invisible as a child. A time when your voice didn't matter. The pain isn't new. It's been waiting, and the other person just held up the mirror. But most people don't pause long enough to see that. They react. They point. They push away the discomfort instead of pulling it closer and asking, "Why does this moment feel so sharp?" The world becomes a minefield full of potential threats, when in truth, the only thing that's being threatened is an idea you've wrapped around your identity. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." But self-knowledge isn't always pleasant. It asks you to stop blaming and start investigating. It requires the courage to say, "It's not just what they did, it's what it touched in me." That shift is hard, but it's the doorway. Because once you take responsibility for your reaction, you regain power. Not power over others, power over yourself. You stop being controlled by every glance, every tone, every offhand comment. You see the trigger, you feel the pain. But now, instead of projecting it outward, you trace it inward, and that tracing leads you somewhere real. You may find an old belief that no longer serves you, or a part of yourself you've been neglecting, or a version of you that still feels 10 years old and unworthy. And suddenly, the moment that looked like rejection becomes an invitation to heal, not just defend. Socrates once said, "The shortest and surest way to live with honor in the world is to be in reality what we would appear to be." And in reality, we are not as calm as we pretend to be, not as healed, not as unfazed. The mirror moments, the ones that provoke us, reveal where the work is still unfinished. And that's not failure. That's guidance. You don't need to be ashamed of your reactions. You just need to be curious about them, to sit with them long enough to ask, what part of me still believes this? Because once you see it, really see it, you can begin to choose differently. The next time someone disrespects you, pause. Ask, what belief about myself is being activated right now? The next time someone leaves you out, ask, why does this make me feel abandoned? You'll start to notice a pattern. You'll stop reacting to the person and start responding to the pain. And that's when healing begins. Because when you realize that the mirror is inside, you stop needing the world to fix itself for you to be okay. You stop demanding perfect behavior from imperfect people just so you can feel whole. You no longer require constant reassurance, constant agreement, constant validation. You understand that the world will keep reflecting, and your job is to keep looking. Plato said, "The greatest wealth is to live content with little." That includes needing little from others to maintain your peace. When your sense of stability comes from self-awareness, not external behavior, you become far more resilient, far more grounded, far more present. And when you live like that, people notice. Not because you tell them, but because you stop reacting like someone desperate to control the narrative. You stop fighting shadows. You stop chasing apologies. You let people be who they are, and let those moments teach you about who you are. So the next time someone shows you something uncomfortable, don't just flinch and walk away. Don't rush to defend or correct. Ask yourself, what is this showing me about me? Most people live trapped inside their own reactions. They hear a tone, see a look, feel an energy shift, and suddenly they're deep in it, defending themselves, overthinking, matching the other person's mood without even realizing it. But what if you could pull back? What if, in the middle of the moment, you didn't have to be the person experiencing it? You could simply watch them like you're not you. That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. When you detach into observer mode, you step out of the emotional swirl and into clarity. You stop seeing the situation from inside your ego and start seeing it from above, like you're floating above the conversation, witnessing it like a quiet presence. The emotion doesn't disappear, but it doesn't own you anymore. You're no longer the puppet of your nervous system. You're the one holding the strings. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." But there's another level. Who looks from above understands. Understands that not every moment deserves a reaction. That most people are acting out their own scripts, their own habits, their own fears, and it has very little to do with you. Imagine someone speaks to you with sarcasm. The old reflex is to match it or shut down. But when you're in observer mode, you see it differently. You see their posture, their face, their tone, and instead of making it about you, you wonder what they might be carrying. You're not cold, you're just still. You don't absorb, you observe. You watch their behavior unfold like it's happening in a movie, and you realize you don't have to get pulled into their storm. That's presence. Socrates once said, "He who is not a good servant will not be a good master." And before you can master anything external, relationships, communication, energy, you have to learn to serve your own mind, to step back from it, to notice when it's trying to pull you into a narrative that doesn't serve you. Observer mode isn't avoidance, it's leadership. It's saying, I choose awareness over reactivity. The moment you watch instead of react, you regain your freedom. The tension is still there, but now you're studying it, you're learning from it, and that learning gives you options. You can say less, you can choose silence, you can move your energy instead of matching theirs. It's not about pretending to be unaffected, it's about realizing you don't have to be swept away just because someone else is drowning. Plato said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." But the greatest power isn't what you say, it's what you withhold. The power to stay centered when someone tries to shake you. The power to let a moment breathe instead of trying to control it. The power to see the game without needing to win it. Most people don't have that power because they've never practiced stepping out of their identity. They've never watched themselves in action. They've never asked, "Who am I being right now?" But the moment you start watching, you start changing. Because you can't improve what you don't observe, and you can't observe if you're always immersed. Start small. The next time you feel yourself getting tight, triggered, or anxious, pause. Imagine you're not you. You're just watching a person named you in a scene. You're studying their tone, their thoughts, their posture. You're noticing what's rising inside of them and what they're choosing to do with it. That space you just created, that's the beginning of emotional sovereignty. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, the pause gets longer. The clarity gets sharper. You start noticing why you want to say something, where that reaction comes from. You don't judge it, you just see it. And that seeing is liberation. Aristotle said, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." That includes emotional thoughts. Just because you feel it doesn't mean you have to act on it. Just because something stirs in you doesn't mean it needs to be unleashed. Observer mode teaches you how to entertain the emotion without becoming it. This is how you grow without force. You stop chasing control and start cultivating presence. You stop needing everyone to act a certain way so you can feel okay. Instead, you trust your ability to remain grounded because you've trained for it, not with aggression, not with overthinking, but with awareness. And once you've lived from that place, once you've tasted the quiet power of watching instead of reacting, you won't want to go back. You'll start choosing peace, not because you're afraid of conflict, but because you know what it costs to constantly be inside it. When someone disrespects you, it's easy to meet them with sharpness. When someone snaps at you, ignores you, mocks you, it's natural to want to mirror that energy, to give them a taste of their own medicine, to strike back verbally or emotionally, because your pride flares up and demands justice. But what if I told you that the strongest counterpunch isn't anger or revenge, it's compassion? Not the soft, overly sentimental kind, not pity, true compassion. The kind that sees through the surface behavior and asks, what must they be carrying to act this way? It doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior. It doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. It means you refuse to join them in their pain. You see it clearly for what it is, and instead of reacting, you rise above it. Because once you understand that most people's cruelty isn't born from power, but from suffering, you stop seeing enemies and start seeing wounds. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, but it can also lead us to an understanding of them." That bitterness you see in someone's tone, it probably didn't start with you. That coldness, that arrogance, it's usually a shield. Something they learned to wear a long time ago, maybe when someone hurt them, maybe when they decided never to be vulnerable again. And now it's hardened into their personality. You happened to be there when the wound showed up, but that doesn't mean it's about you. When you see someone lash out, ask yourself, is this strength or is this pain wearing armor? That one question shifts your entire posture. Suddenly you're not reacting, you're observing, and that observation gives you space. In that space, you find your real power, the ability to choose a response that doesn't add fuel to the fire. Plato wrote, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." That includes the person you can't stand, the one who said the thing you can't forget, the one who acted like you didn't matter. They're not exempt. Their pain might look different, their defenses might be sharper, but the struggle is still there. And when you meet pain with more pain, you just multiply it. But when you meet it with clarity, with understanding, with compassion, you interrupt the pattern. You refuse to be pulled into their storm. You stay rooted. and that rattles people more than any insult ever could. Compassion isn't weakness. It takes immense strength to hold back when someone's trying to provoke you, to stay calm when your pride is screaming, to listen when your ego wants to speak, to soften when everything in you wants to harden. That's real power, because it's power over yourself, over your impulses, over the part of you that wants to defend every wound. Socrates said, "The shortest and surest way to live with honor in the world is to be in reality what we would appear to be." We want to appear calm, wise, unshaken. But are we really? Most of the time, no. We're reactive. We want to win. We want to be right. We want to hurt back. But what we really want, deep down, is to feel whole again. To feel that no one, not even the cruelest person, can take us out of ourselves. And that's exactly what compassion protects. It doesn't mean you don't feel hurt. It means you don't become that hurt. You feel it, yes. You acknowledge it. But then you breathe and you ask, what is the most powerful thing I can do here that doesn't cost me my peace? Sometimes that means saying less. Sometimes it means walking away. Sometimes it means responding gently when everything in you wants to be sharp. Not for them, but for you. Because you're not here to play small games. You're not here to let someone else's pain decide who you become in the moment. You're here to master yourself. Aristotle said, "To avoid criticism, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing." But compassion isn't avoidance, it's presence. It's the highest level of emotional skill because it lets you protect your energy without needing to prove your strength. You stop keeping score. You stop needing the last word. You stop making everything personal. You start seeing people for what they carry, not just how they act. That perspective changes everything. It turns the rude stranger into a soul having a rough day, the passive-aggressive coworker into someone starved for recognition, the person who left you behind into someone who never learned how to stay. It doesn't erase your boundaries. It doesn't remove consequences, but it does remove the poison. And when you remove the poison, your mind clears. You move on faster. You sleep deeper. You don't replay the same argument 100 times. You don't build imaginary speeches in the shower. You're free, not because they changed, but because you did. Compassion is the ultimate counterpunch because it puts you in control of your voice, of your energy, of your narrative. It reminds you that you don't have to be anyone else's reflection. You can be your own light. There's something in you that wants to correct them. You hear the lie, the misunderstanding, the subtle jab, and a part of you tightens. You want to set the record straight. You want to defend your name, your choices, your truth. And it feels like if you don't speak, if you don't respond, you're somehow agreeing, or worse, surrendering. But what if you let them be wrong and let it mean nothing? That's where peace begins. Most of us think that being right equals strength, that when someone misjudges us or twists a story, it's our responsibility to correct it, to stand up and speak our truth at all costs. But often, the cost is much higher than we realize. Our time, our energy, our calm, our sleep. We trade peace for being right, and we never stop to ask if it was even worth it. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. That includes arguing over things that don't need resolution. That includes obsessing over misunderstandings that don't actually impact your life. That includes chasing the illusion that if they just understood, you could finally rest." But peace doesn't come from being understood. It comes from understanding yourself enough to know you don't need to be. We've all had moments where someone misrepresents us, tells the story in a way that puts them in the right and us in the wrong, and immediately the mind starts building a case, gathering receipts, rehearsing speeches. But all of that lives inside the same wound, the belief that our worth depends on their version of the truth. It doesn't. Aristotle said, "It is the mark of an educated mind to entertain a thought without accepting it." The same goes for criticism, for assumptions, for opinions thrown your way that miss the point entirely. You can hear them, even hold them in your mind for a moment, and choose not to accept them. Not because you're afraid of conflict, but because you've finally reached a level of inner clarity where not everything deserves a response. Letting someone be wrong about you is not weakness. It's strength in its most silent form. It says, "I know who I am, and I don't need your agreement to feel real." That doesn't mean you never speak up. It means you choose when to speak, based on purpose, not pride. You stop responding to bait. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop begging for fairness in conversations that were never about truth in the first place. Socrates taught that strong minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, weak minds discuss people. When you engage in endless correction and defense, you often get pulled into that last category, discussing people, including yourself, in ways that go nowhere. But when you rise above the need to be right, you enter a quieter place, a clearer place, a higher place. And from there, something remarkable happens. The world becomes lighter. You realize that not everyone needs to like you, that not every story needs correcting, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nod, say nothing, and keep walking, not out of indifference, but out of discipline, because you know what peace costs, and you're no longer willing to trade it for the illusion of control. Let them think you're arrogant. Let them believe you were wrong. Let them paint you however they need to justify their own narrative. You don't have to carry their version of you into your next chapter. You don't have to waste hours reshaping a story that wasn't even true to begin with. Plato said, "Opinion is the medium between knowledge and ignorance." And most of what people think about you is just that, opinion, filtered through their pain, their projections, their limited view. You don't need to argue with opinion. You just need to live your truth so fully, so freely, that your life becomes the answer. That's the most powerful kind of correction. None at all. Just peace, just presence, just showing up again and again, aligned with your values, regardless of the noise around you. Because if you need them to agree with you in order to feel stable, your peace will always be at risk. One conversation, one post, one sideways look, and you're spiraling again. But if you can let them be wrong and let it mean nothing, you walk through life unshaken, not cold, not detached, just clear. The truth doesn't need to shout. Most people treat every insult like a fastball thrown straight at their chest. They catch it instinctively, grip it tightly, examine it, and then carry it around for the rest of the day, sometimes the rest of their life. But what if you didn't have to catch it at all? What if, when the words came flying, sarcasm, judgment, passive aggression, you simply let them fall? No need to block it, no need to dodge. Just watch it pass by and hit the ground with a quiet thud. Useless, powerless, empty. That's the visualization. Someone says something cruel, sharp, designed to poke at you, and instead of reaching for it, you imagine it floating right past your energy field, untouched. It lands behind you like a dropped pebble. You keep walking. You didn't absorb it. You didn't react. You didn't let it in. You just didn't catch it. This sounds simple, but it takes practice. Because for most of us, insults don't just land on the surface, they pierce. Not because the words are sharp, but because something inside of us believes them, or fears they might be true. That's why they stick. They attach to old wounds, old doubts, and pull you into an emotional spiral. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And that includes your reactions. Every time you catch an insult, you're revealing a part of yourself that hasn't been fully healed yet. A place where you still crave approval, still doubt your worth, still feel the need to defend. But what happens when you start seeing insults as air, sound without substance, just another expression of someone else's energy, an energy you're not obligated to take on? Suddenly, the world becomes lighter. Not because people stop throwing words, but because you stop catching them. It's not about being indifferent, it's about being unavailable for what doesn't serve you. Socrates said, "When the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the loser." Most insults aren't about you at all. They're projections, expressions of someone's own tension, fear, or powerlessness. And once you stop personalizing them, you stop being controlled by them. Imagine every conversation like a tennis match. You don't have to swing at every ball that comes your way, especially when the ball is covered in venom. Sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. Just let the ball bounce past you, let the insult fall to the ground and dissolve. That kind of stillness, of inner silence, isn't passive. It's a declaration, a quiet refusal to be moved by every low vibration that passes through your space. It's you saying, "My peace isn't up for negotiation, not today." Aristotle wrote, "Anybody can become angry, that is easy, but to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, that is not easy." So don't be quick to anger. Be quick to observe. Be quick to remember that the insult isn't about you unless you decide it is. This is where visualization becomes a tool. When the words come, picture them physically. Watch them float toward you like paper birds. You don't have to swat them. You don't have to analyze them. Just let them fall. Watch them lose momentum and flutter to the floor, unnoticed, unclaimed. And here's the magic. The more you practice this, the more naturally it happens. Over time, insults lose their power. Not because you're numb, but because you're awake. Awake to who you are. Awake to what's real. Awake to the fact that your energy is too valuable to be spent reacting to things that don't even belong to you. That's what this visualization trains you to do. Preserve your peace in real time. You become the mountain that doesn't move when the wind blows. Not because you're stubborn, but because you're grounded. Grounded in the truth that not every word deserves your attention. Not every opinion deserves your engagement. Not every judgment needs to be corrected. Let people be who they are. Let them speak from their pain if they must. But don't catch it. Don't turn their noise into your problem. Let it fall. Most people want to be emotionally strong, but only in theory. They love the idea of being calm, grounded, unbothered. But when the trigger actually shows up, a late reply, a disrespectful tone, someone cutting them off in traffic, all of that imagined strength disappears. And they don't see it, but they're wasting the best opportunities life gives them to train. You don't build emotional strength by avoiding discomfort. You build it by facing small triggers every single day and choosing not to flinch. Think about the body. You don't grow stronger muscles by sitting still. You grow them by doing something that challenges them. Resistance, strain, effort. The process isn't always comfortable, but that discomfort is where growth begins. The same is true for the mind, and even more true for the emotions. Your triggers are your emotional dumbbells. Every time someone irritates you and you don't react, every time you feel that flash of anger or jealousy or fear, and you breathe through it instead of feeding it, you are rewiring your nervous system. You are retraining your emotional reflexes. You are building endurance where there used to be panic, space where there used to be impulse. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, but it can also lead to mastery if you choose to work with it." If you choose to treat life as a gym and your emotions as the muscles you're here to strengthen, most people live in emotional reaction. Something happens, they respond automatically. No pause, no awareness, just a cycle. Trigger, reaction, regret, repeat. And they wonder why they feel drained all the time. It's because they've never trained their emotional body. They're walking through life unconditioned, letting every bump, every tone, every delay knock them out of rhythm. But once you start training with your triggers, everything changes. You stop taking things personally, not because you've become numb, but because you've become precise. You can feel the emotion rise, observe it, and choose what to do with it. That choice, that's strength, that's self-ownership, that's freedom. Let's say someone cuts you off in traffic. That moment, heart jumps, breath tightens, is a rep. Not for your arms, but for your awareness. You can honk, curse, spiral, or you can inhale. You can remember that this is your training, that the other person is just a stranger you'll never meet again. But your reaction, that stays with you. That shapes you. Multiply that moment by 100 tiny moments a day, and you have your emotional gym. That coworker who interrupts you. Representative, the text you expected but didn't get. Representative, the slow Wi-Fi, the spilled coffee, the passive-aggressive comment. Rep, rep, rep. And with each one you get stronger, not by force, but by choice. Not by pretending it doesn't bother you, but by staying conscious in the middle of it. Socrates said, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." So don't waste time fighting every trigger. Don't obsess over the fact that you got annoyed or felt disrespected or lost your patience. Instead, ask, how can I use this? How can I let this become the rep I needed today? Emotional mastery isn't about never being triggered. It's about using your triggers as training partners, and that means you stop avoiding hard conversations. You stop ghosting situations that make you uncomfortable. You stop blaming the world for not being easier, and instead, you get better at holding your ground inside it. You start to see frustration not as a problem, but as resistance you get to lift. You start to view envy not as something to suppress, but as something to examine. What is it pointing to? What can it teach me about my own unmet desires? Even sadness becomes part of the workout. When you let yourself feel it fully, without letting it run your decisions, you're building emotional capacity. The ability to hold big energy without losing your direction. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. That includes emotional excellence. If you want to be calm under pressure, then you have to practice calm when things feel pressurized. If you want to be patient, then your daily annoyances are the arena. There's no magical transformation coming. There's only now. Only the choice to train again and again. This kind of training rewires your brain. Your nervous system becomes less reactive. Your breathing deepens. Your default response slows down, and you start to feel something you may not have felt in a long time. Space. Space between stimulus and response. Space to choose something higher than your past patterns. Space to decide who you're becoming moment by moment. And that space, that's your evolution. Most people spend their entire lives avoiding discomfort, dodging triggers, escaping anything that pokes at their wounds. But you're not here for avoidance. You're here to grow. And that means walking toward the tension, not with fear, but with purpose. Let your triggers teach you. Let them expose your edges. Let them show you the parts of yourself still holding on to old beliefs, old insecurities, old reactions. And then, each time you feel that familiar spark of irritation, of pride, of panic, pause. See it as a bell ringing at the start of a new set. your moment to lift, your moment to choose, your moment to become who you say you are. This is emotional strength, quiet, steady, built in the moments no one sees. Because no one applauds when you pause instead of snapping. No one throws you a parade for staying silent when you could have erupted. But those are the reps that count. Those are the moments that build the emotional body you need to carry everything else. So train with your triggers. Life's not punishing you. It's shaping you. Most people believe in speaking their truth. We're told not to bottle things up, not to let people walk all over us. Express how you feel, they say. Don't let it fester. And yes, there's truth in that, but not the whole truth. Because there's another kind of expression that doesn't liberate you. It leaks from you. It's not healing. It's harm disguised as honesty. That's what happens when you speak from the wound, not the wisdom. From the ache, not the understanding. There's a time to speak, but there's also a time to wait. Not forever, just long enough to let the sting pass, to let the noise settle, to let the message you're carrying find clarity instead of chaos. Because what we say in pain often sounds nothing like what we mean in peace. Carl Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. But you can't know your own darkness while it's still flaring, while it's still hot, while your nervous system is flooded and your ego is screaming for validation, for defense, for revenge. In that state, you're not speaking from your true self. You're speaking from your wound. And wounds don't have good language. They have survival reflexes. They blame. They exaggerate. They speak in ultimatums. They say things that can't be unsaid. That's why silence, at the right time, is not weakness. It's strategy. It's restraint. It's what protects you from saying something that might feel good for a second, but damage everything you've built for years. That pause, that moment where you want to say everything but choose not to, is where your real strength is tested. Because it's not hard to speak when emotions are high. It's hard to wait, to feel everything and still say nothing, to sit with the pain, not project it, to let your inner storm pass before you bring anyone else into it. Socrates once said, "The greatest way to live with honor in this world is to be what we pretend to be." And many people pretend to be strong by speaking first, by getting the last word, by unloading what they feel without considering what it might cost. But true strength looks like this. I'm in pain, and I still choose not to hurt you with it. I'm angry, but I won't let that be the only voice in the room. I'm triggered, but I won't turn that into a weapon. That kind of silence is sacred. It gives you space to find your truth, not the one distorted by emotion, but the one anchored in self-awareness, the one that holds accountability, not just accusation, the one that honors both you and the relationship you're speaking into. Because once you've healed, or at least begun to heal, your words soften. They stop sounding like explosions and start sounding like insight. You're not just trying to prove a point or punish someone anymore. You're trying to connect. You're trying to build something stronger than your pain. And ironically, once you've done that inner work, you often find that you don't need to say half of what you thought you did. The emotional charge is gone. The need to defend disappears. The urgency fades. What remains is calm, grounded clarity. And from that place, you can speak with power that doesn't wound. You can express yourself without spilling unprocessed emotion on someone who might not deserve it. Aristotle said, "Anybody can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, and in the right way, that is not easy." The same is true for all strong emotion. The words you speak in your most triggered state aren't wise, they're just loud. And loud doesn't equal true. Loud equals wounded. So how do you know if you're speaking too soon? If you still feel the urge to win, you're not ready. If you're still crafting sentences in your head designed to sting or shame, you're not ready. If you feel that familiar tightness in your throat, that quickened breath, that racing mind, you're not ready. Wait, not forever. Just until your clarity returns. Just until you can separate your truth from your pain. Just until you can speak without needing to dominate, hurt, or be right. Because when you speak after you've healed, you say fewer words, and they land deeper. You don't need to explain everything. You don't need to rehash the entire story. You just name what's real, what matters, what you've learned. And people feel the difference. They're more open, less defensive, more willing to hear you, because you're not throwing your pain at them. You're offering understanding. And even if they don't understand, even if the words land on deaf ears, you can walk away knowing you spoke from your highest self, not your hurt self. And that alone is worth more than any temporary feeling of satisfaction that comes from getting it all out. Let the wound speak to you first. Let it tell you what still hurts. Let it show you where you still need softness, compassion, boundaries. Tend to that. Then speak. Speak from the scar, not the cut. Speak from the lesson, not the chaos. Speak with love for yourself, not as a weapon against someone else. Because silence, used wisely, is not silence at all. It's strength. It's choosing to protect your peace, your dignity, and your future, even when the present feels heavy. And that's a power no outburst can ever match. Most people don't feel emotions. They become them. One moment, they're calm. The next, they're fury. One small comment, one unexpected delay, and suddenly they're not thinking clearly anymore. They're gripped by anger, flooded with fear, drowning in shame. The emotion becomes the lens. It distorts everything, and they forget the most important truth in that moment. You are not the emotion. You're the one watching it. That difference between being the feeling and observing it is the line between chaos and clarity, between being dragged around by every thought and standing still in the middle of the storm. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Emotions are part of that unconscious current. They rise without warning, surge through your system, and unless you've practiced awareness, they use you. You become their puppet, your voice, your posture, your choices, driven not by wisdom, but by whatever raw feeling took over your system. But feelings are not facts. They're visitors. They show up, they speak, they leave. And if you can learn to pause, even for a breath, you create space between you and the feeling. In that space, you reclaim your role. You remember that you are not anger. You are not fear. You are not the ego screaming to defend itself. You are the observer, the one behind the thoughts, the one who can choose not to react. Socrates said, "Know thyself." But how can you know yourself if you're constantly merged with whatever mood is present? Self-knowledge begins with separation, with stepping back, not to disconnect, but to see. To notice the story your emotion is telling without blindly believing it. Let's say anger rises. It feels urgent. It tells you that someone crossed a line. It demands action, now. But if you wait just a few seconds, if you don't move, don't speak, don't lash out, you begin to notice the anger isn't you. It's just energy, a defense mechanism, a flare from some part of you that felt threatened. And when you don't obey it immediately, it loses power. You feel it, but it doesn't control you. Fear works the same way. It creeps in with whispers of what might go wrong. It tightens your chest, speeds up your breath, fills your head with disaster. But even fear, when observed, weakens. The act of naming it, there's fear, pulls you into presence. You become the watcher, and the watcher is always calm. Because the watcher knows that no emotion lasts, that all feelings like clouds pass through the sky of your awareness. And you're not the cloud, you're the sky. Aristotle said, anyone can become angry, that is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, that is not easy. What makes it possible is disidentification. That's the superpower. To be able to say, I feel anger rising, but I am not that anger. That shift gives you choice. And choice is what transforms reaction into response. You stop being pulled around like a puppet. You start guiding your behavior with intention. This doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. You don't deny the emotion. You welcome it. You feel it deeply, but you don't become it. You don't build your identity on it. You let it flow through, not root in. Think of it like a fire alarm going off. The emotion is the alarm, loud, urgent, impossible to ignore. But you don't grab a hammer and start smashing things. You investigate. You look for the source. Is there a real fire, or just some smoke? That's how you begin treating emotions, with curiosity instead of compliance. Every time you choose to observe instead of react, you get stronger, more centered, more free. You stop walking through life as a slave to your moods. You become consistent, steady. People feel the difference in your energy. You're not so easily rattled, not so easily provoked. Not because you don't feel, but because you don't let feelings define you. Plato wrote, "The first and best victory is to conquer self." And you conquer self not by force, but by awareness. By noticing the exact moment when emotion wants to take the wheel, and calmly, quietly choosing to keep your hands on it instead. This is not easy work. It takes practice, patience, discipline. But with each moment of disidentification, you get closer to emotional sovereignty, the state where you no longer need the world to be perfect for you to be okay. Because now, your peace doesn't depend on external harmony, it depends on inner separation between you and the storm. You are not the anger, you are not the fear. You are not the ego shouting for control. You are the one watching it all unfold, with quiet power and the ability to decide what comes next. The world won't go quiet just because you found your peace. People will still cut you off mid-sentence. They'll still talk behind your back, misread your intentions, fail to apologize, choose ego over honesty. Life will still throw things you didn't plan, late nights, early calls, broken trust, sudden losses. The noise won't stop, the chaos won't dissolve, but if you've mastered what we've been building toward, you won't shake. Because the point was never to change the world. The point was to change how you move through it. Most people live in a constant state of emotional turbulence, bouncing between triggers like a pinball. They believe they need the world to be different, kinder, quieter, more predictable, for them to feel okay. So they try to manage everything outside themselves, clinging to people who agree, avoiding situations that might sting, chasing control like it's the only way to stay afloat. But what if you didn't need to control the waves? What if you just learned how to stand still inside them? Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." And in this frame, the final one, you become untouchable, not because nothing touches you, but because it no longer owns you. You don't become the noise. You don't match every mood in the room. You don't swing wildly from high to low based on someone else's words. You stay centered, quiet inside. That's the power of all the inner work, of watching, detaching, disidentifying. You begin to live not as a reactor, but as a responder. And the difference is everything. Reacting is fast, defensive, emotional. It's driven by fear or pride or unexamined pain. Responding is slow, deliberate, conscious. It comes from presence, not panic. And once you live from response, the world starts to look different. Not because it changed, but because you did. The same insult that used to burn now sounds like static. The same rejection that once collapsed, you now feels like redirection. You lose the urge to prove yourself. You no longer need to win arguments or control outcomes. You don't need the apology to find closure. You don't need everyone to understand. That's emotional freedom. Socrates said, "To find yourself, think for yourself. And to think for yourself, you first have to see yourself, separate from the waves of emotion, the noise of ego, the storms that others live inside. Because when you know who you are, no one else can tell you who you're not." And here's the part no one tells you. When you master this, you still feel. You're not a robot. You're not numb. You still notice the betrayal, the sarcasm, the loss. You still care. But the difference is, you don't react from the wound. You respond from the wisdom that was forged through it. That quiet confidence. It shows up in how you breathe when everyone else is yelling, in how you choose silence over proving your point, in how you walk away, not out of weakness, but because you're no longer trying to convince someone of your worth. Plato wrote, "The measure of a man is what he does with power, and the greatest power isn't dominance or control. It's restraint, it's discipline, it's the ability to stay aligned when everything around you is pulling at your edges. You don't chase closure. You don't repeat stories that drain you. You don't sit in rooms where your peace has to shrink. You walk forward with less noise, more clarity. This is the final frame, where the world still roars, but your soul stays silent. Not because you're avoiding life, but because you've learned how to meet it. With awareness, with steadiness, with the kind of inner strength that can't be faked and doesn't need to be announced. You're not triggered. You're trained. You're not reactive. You're responsible for your energy, your choices, your presence. And the world notices, not because you're louder, but because you carry something rare. A stillness that no insult can shatter. A calm that doesn't rely on comfort. A clarity that came not from escaping chaos, but from walking straight through it and coming out unshaken. When the world pulls at your edges, remember, your strength is not in how loudly you react, but in how quietly you remain centered. Let them shout. Let life twist. You are not here to match the storm. You are here to master your calm. Watch the next video on your screen to keep sharpening your mind and steadying your spirit. Thank you for walking this path with us. You are a part of Stoic Journal, where every step inward leads you forward. And when you're ready, come back. We'll be right here, building the silence that holds real power.